Welcome to the Masons Podcast, your source of insight and innovation in New Zealand building and construction. Each episode explores the products, systems and solutions that support trades, specifiers and developers to deliver high-quality, durable and efficient buildings across Aotearoa, New Zealand. From building envelope performance to flooring, acoustics and fire separation systems, we share practical knowledge and ideas that help shape the built environment.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Masons Podcast, where today we're going to shine light on the parts of your home you rarely see, but which quietly make a huge difference in how you live. I'm your host, Michelle, and today we're talking to Arthur Whitfield, Technical Manager from Masons, about something that doesn't usually make headlines but can make or break comfort, safety and peace of mind, and that is your floors. And in multi-level homes, apartments or intertenancy situations, floors are not just structural. They're acoustic shields, they're thermal barriers, and their fire separators all rolled into one. We'll look at the Masons Enviro Floor System. It's a floor solution designed to make sure your floors don't just meet the code, but actually perform in the real world. We'll talk about how it works, why it matters, the common mistakes that can compromise a floor, and how the system keeps residents happy, builders sane, and developers stress-free. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's step into the world underfoot. Good morning, Arthur.
Morning, Michelle.
Right, let's start simply. When people hear Masons Enviro Floor System, they might think it's simply insulation, joists and a ceiling below. Arthur, can you explain what this floor actually is?
Enviro Floor is comprised of 75mm thick Enviro AAC panels, steel reinforcing embedded in them. There's also some high-performance adhesives, screw systems and a particular floor framing to support the floor. So it all comes together to provide a squeak-free, high-performance, like a premium feeling floor.
I'm going to get a bit technical here on some of the properties of these panels, things like density and compressive strength, just so people really understand what's going on under the surface.
The MPa, or compressive strength of these panels, is around 4 MPa. The in-service density, so that's after you account for the steel and a bit of moisture uptake, about 600 kilograms per cubic metre. And what that translates into is each panel, which is 2,200 millimetres long, 600 millimetres wide and 75 millimetres thick, is about 66 kilograms each panel. So for when people are calculating loads for lifting on high abs, or they're basically thinking about lifting and placing the panel, you really need to have 2 people to handle them. Apart from that, they have some thermal properties, there's certain R value, and we could go one more. Sound transmission loss, they're quite good at absorbing low frequencies, that sort of thing. That's quite different to sound transmission class. So sound transmission loss is just measured at a particular frequency, which is 1,000 hertz.
So lightweight, strong enough for floors, thermally insulating and sound absorbing. These panels seem to be ticking a lot of boxes, Arthur.
They do contribute to quite a nice to live with mid-floor.
Okay, can you give us a typical example of how a floor, such as the Enviro Floor System, is constructed?
So the joists are laid out according to the system. So the joist spacings are closer than most people are used to, and that's to suit the length of the panels, and it also gives a really good performance for the floor in terms of liveliness and that sort of thing. So there's quite a conservative spacing of the joists and joist span. So the first thing to do is to get the framing set out right. People have a choice of graded MSG8 timber, high beam or posi struts to work with. Moving up from there, they need to bond the 75mm Enviro AAC panels down permanently. So we offer a range of methods to do that. The one that I like the most and basically is going to give people great productivity is to use Sudal Gorilla Pro click and fix system.
Right.
We're mispriming the edges of the panel and the framing first. That just does such a magnificent job and it's so fast for the builders. Then we have some really substantial Type 17 fixings that go down through the panel to hold everything together in addition to the adhesive foam.
And how does the finished surface look like?
If you're familiar with what AC panel looks like, you have this sort of quite porous, light sort of looking surface. The panels are reasonably flat, but over a large surface area, there may be a little bit of up and down. So occasionally a little bit of light sanding or a little bit of light filling might be required. And we do suggest sometimes a floor topping or screed may be indicated or necessary. This is optional. It kind of depends on what floor coverings or floor treatments the designers are calling up.
From a builder's perspective, can you give us a quick rundown on the ease of installation?
Compared to putting down, say, a 20 millimetre large scale, highly compressed particle board or OSB panel, there is going to be a little bit more labour in this because you're dealing with smaller, more heavier panels, and there will be a need to do more glue joining of the edges and, gluing up or adhesive foaming up the joist. So there's a little bit more labour in it for them, and they may not be as familiar with the system.
Is it easy to cut and drill?
Yes, relatively easy. So it is a cementitious-based product. That means that people do need to control the dust, make sure that they're not getting it into the eyes, on their skin too much, or certainly not breathing anything in, and just controlling that dust so it doesn't, get places we don't want it to get. But look, people are very familiar with the need to do that with any cementitious-based products these days.
Great, okay.
So look, relatively easy drilling, no problem at all. Very easy to drill through with your hole saws or, making apertures with a saber saw or something if needs be.
And what kind of problems is it trying to solve here?
If we wanted to frame it as a problem, this is a step up from your standard light timber floor system. So your highly compressed particle boards, your OSB boards, your more of a premium timber solution would be sort of like plywood. And then this sits in the middle before you step up to your Stilton floors, your cast floors,
real heavy duty
or your
floors.
pre-tension floor slab, like the super premium end. So what problem is it trying to solve? You're trying to get a floor that feels amazing, that is fairly lightweight and cost-effective to construct compared to some of the super premium type floors I mentioned, that absorbs sound and it just gives you a great experience. Perhaps a little bit of thermal modification between rooms if people want that as well. You're increasing the mass of your floor.
Yes.
So it's all design decisions, it's budget decisions.
Still using a light timber frame structure,
Still
which is
using
great.
Yes. Yep,
so
that's
it
right.
is cost effective for a good solid feeling floor.
Absolutely. It sits in the middle of the range in terms of performance, quality and price, in terms of floor options.
Great. And movement and squeaks, it resolves issues like that?
Yeah, the system should be completely squeak-free.
Yeah, absolutely. What about cracking and floor finishes? How does it resolve movement and cracking coming through?
Well, there should be very little movement expressing through the panels. Where the floor framing changes directions, especially with a larger scale as for floor, that would be a good place to put a construction or a movement joint. And perhaps, if it's a complex shaped floor, where there might be sort of cutouts or elements of the floor that are sort of a little more isolated from the main body of the floor, maybe it's worth allowing for some movement there, maybe. Yeah. And the thing is with floor finishes, if you're talking about a rigid floor finish, like say a tile, then it would be important to allow for that in the fitting and design of the floor finish. So generally speaking, it isn't an issue. You've got a pre-finished, prefabricated product. If it's been kept, stored reasonably dry and installed dry, during construction, it will give out what moisture it might have absorbed if it's had a bit of rainfall or sat on the site for a couple of days before it went up. And you shouldn't have any of those dimensional change type cracking that you get with, like, say, poured concrete.
It's pretty stable.
It is.
Okay, how about acoustically? Does the increased mass help with acoustics of the floor?
The answer to that question is that yes, it helps, but without overplaying it. So it's still a rigid material. It's rigidly fixed to the floor framing with screws and adhesive, so it will transfer sound. AAC panel, as we heard from previous pods, is quite good at absorbing certain frequencies. So it does depend on the floor treatment. So if you have got a hard floor treatment, even with the insulation layer and the ceiling layers, possibly even suspension clips, there a certain amount of sound will come through, especially impact sound. The tapping noises, that sort of thing, they will come through to a degree. But if you have got a nice thick underlay and a nice thick carpet on top, and you've got at least a 240mm joist, a 10mm jib and some insulation in there, it is going to actually meet pretty good performance standards instead of comfort, like sound transfer between floors. But the choice of floor topping does make a huge difference to the performance.
Okay, and how does the AAC floor panel compare to timber floors in terms of durability?
It's similar. So as with any of the timber-based floor products, they're very durable, especially if they're dry. If there is long-term wetting, such as an accidental leak that somehow gets through the waterproof membrane, then the durability of all the products would be compromised. So essentially they're all of fairly equal in terms of durability in service within the build.
From a design perspective, how early should a system like this be considered in a project?
Ideally right at the start. The reason for that is that the floor framing set out is different to what most people are used to and what the conventional sort of floor systems are call for. Also, this will add 55 millimetres to the building height per mid-floor. So, if you've got 2 stories or 3 stories, then potentially, there's quite a change in height. So, that's definitely going to be something the designer needs to think about.
You need to consider.
Their recession planes and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So those would be the 2 things that I would advise. Look, people do convert jobs or they decide they want to use the system. And as long as it's fairly early on, it's no trouble to change the joist set out, the framing set out on the plan, as long as you're within your recession and height plane. Yep.
Yeah.
And there's implications for cladding and rigid air barrier and everything changes slightly by the extra thickness that it brings to the mid-floor. So there's a few considerations there.
That's right. And what about coordination with other trades? You've really got to think about the steps on how it's managed.
No, this is not really, because this is fitted by the builder.
Yeah.
So it's actually really simple. It's no different to the builder sequencing the fit of or any of the floor systems that they would fit.
Yeah.
The important thing would be to have all the components on site well before they need to use them. Check that everything's in order. They've got all the screws. They've got the right glue. They've got the application gun for the adhesive foam, all of the common sense stuff. And then have a little bit of a think about how they're going to start the layout. So panels are laid stretcher bond. And you sort of have to sort of think about that and how they will the edges may gradually creep across the centre line of each joist. So builders are well and truly on top of that. That's what they do all day, every day, just thinking those things through.
What about penetrations of the floor slab with surfaces and things like that? It's got to be thought of nice and early?
Yes.
How does that affect the floor panels?
Look, it's pretty straightforward. Penetrations of up to 80 millimetre diameter can be made pretty much anywhere. But if there's larger penetrations, they need to be framed out.
Okay.
For support.
Just like any floor, really.
More or less.
Yeah. How does the system fit into intertenancy situations?
The floor in this iteration is not an intertenancy floor. And the reason for that is that intertenancy floors have got to meet requirements for fire separation, and in particular with regard to fire burning up from the tenancy or the cell below. The system is not rated as an intertenancy system. Also, with an intertenancy floor, you would expect a sound transmission class and impact insulation class to be suitable with a whole range of different floor toppings. So in this system, that's not a thing. So this is about comfort and premiumness in a standalone dwelling or building. It might be an office. Offices, it's great for offices, where the occupants are the same right through the building. You haven't got different occupancies or tenancies.
It's something that you're thinking about in the future?
It's something that's been worked on.
Is there some common issues when the Enviro floors aren't properly designed? What can go wrong with the design and installation?
Look, it's most unlikely that a designer would have allowed this to slip, but the overall height change, the floor framing set-out change. So in terms of things going wrong on site, I've never seen it happen yet because people are normally very careful. It's not an everyday system. It's not something that builders would fit every week. And so they usually take extra care reading the manuals, ringing up, talking it through, watching the video and looking at the drawings. Look, the only little whoopsies really are if the guys overuse the adhesive foam and they go burn through too much, or perhaps they may use the different length screws and the places different indicator. And usually it just means someone has to quickly whip down to the hardware store and pick up some more screws. So it's not major typically.
Thermal performance often gets talked about in walls and roofs, but not floors. Why can this intermediate level thermal insulation matter?
Because 75mm AAC panel has a certain amount of mass, and because it also has a known R value, it can be factored into that mid-floor, and that's one of those things that the designer or maybe the people have had floors like this in overseas or similar constructed floors, and they like the way it helps moderate the temperature in those spaces. So it's not a must-have, it's a nice-to-have, but the combination of the R value that you get from the panel, which is about R value 0.56, just in the panel, then you've got the air gap, you've got the insulation, you've got the jib plasterboard lining. You know, it's not massive, but you can pick up some insulation value between floors, and it's just a nice to have.
That's right. It's nice to stabilise your internal temperatures, as little as it may be, sometimes.
The little things mount up.
They do.
If someone's got an overall design and they're thinking about energy efficiency and the use of, I won't bore everybody, but designers know what I'm talking about. When you're thinking about the whole picture and the livability and the comfort and the amount of heat those living spaces need to be comfortable, it all factors in.
And what support documentation can masons provide to support the consents for these floors?
We have the design manual, installation instructions. We have a set of drawings to show people how it goes together and, what fixings and what to do around bracing walls and that sort of thing. We also have a product assurance supplier statement from the building business that's called a PASS, and we have a PS1 from the engineers who have been over the system really thoroughly, and that is available to designers or builders or homeowners if they're putting together the package themselves. So that's available on request, and that's a current up-to-date PS1.
Why would someone choose this floor?
So you would choose this floor if you are looking for something step up from the very good quality timber-based products on the market, the compressed particle boards, the OSB floors, the plywood floors, all very good solutions. But you're looking for something a little more. But you don't want to go to the full noise, super premium products such as the Starleton floor systems, the pre-tension, pre-stress floor slabs,
heavy
or
duty,
the poured in situ type solutions. So this is your middle ground. So you're going to get a luxe feeling floor underfoot when it's finished. You're going to get completely squeak free. You're going to get a little bit of mass thermal moderation between floors. If I was building a house and I could afford it, I would have this system. It's a great middle ground system.
Absolutely. It's great that you can use light timber frame. If you go to the heavy duty floors, you've got much heavier engineering, costs are involved.
Different systems solving different problems.
Yes.
It's probably not a great parallel. It's just this is, as I say, it's great middle ground. It's affordable luxury. It handles good loads.
Okay.
And with good spans in the span tables that your engineers have come up with.
And from a homeowner's point of view, what's the payoff?
It's just going to feel great. Once the floor is installed, the floor finishes are in, and the home is finished and they're living in it, they will not have to think about it. That's what we're offering. So it isn't going to be a trampoline where the kins are running across the floor.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any squeaking. And depending on your floor topping, and I do emphasize that, if you have got some nice luxurious carpet and underlay above, you're very unlikely to hear much sound transfer through to the floor below. There's always caveats.
You want sounds to feel distant rather than intrusive.
Depending on the situation, you may not hear too much.
If I'm about to install the system tomorrow, what are the key installation points I need to understand?
I would suggest that people have the mason's installation instructions and drawings printed out and on site. I would suggest that they have had the material to site previously and gone through it, make sure everything they need is on site. Because once you're in the middle of this installation, you don't want to be stopping to send the boy off in the ute to find another bag of mortar or a box of screws. You just want to crack on.
Yep.
The third thing is make sure that you've got the PPE organised. You will produce dust when you're cutting it and drilling it. Look after yourselves and protect yourselves with definitely dust masks and eyewear, and I would suggest gloves as well. Apart from that, plan your lifts. So the material, even if it's stored dry and covered, it's not super sensitive to moisture in terms of its structural properties, but it will absorb moisture. So if it's left out in the rain for a long weekend, when you come back on Monday and work with it, it's going to be heavier, much heavier, less comfortable to handle. So at 66 kilograms a panel, please plan your moving and your lifting. If you're high-ebbing it up to the next floor, you plan your lifts, get your weights right, and avoid problems.
Yeah. What about and surfaces and penetrations? I can imagine that holes have to be a certain distance from edges, and so they should be planned out.
Yes, but refer to the manual and the drawings, and thank you for that. It's all there. But look, builders are used to complying with the requirements of the different systems, and that's why
they would be aware of it.
Well, that's why I led with having the instructions and the drawings on site.
Okay,
and
great.
So that's also good for the inspector when they're coming to look for compliance. One of the first things they will do is look to see it's been installed according to the manufacturer's instructions. Then there's other aspects they would look for as well. But that's probably one of the first things they'll do.
So before we wrap up installation, I think we've pretty much discussed the big safety boxes that builders need to tick. You've mentioned manhandling, dust control, safe cutting practices. Don't leave your panels loose, fix progressively as you go.
Well, yes, I suppose that's a good point. But generally, my observation is there's 2 or 3 people working on this because the panels require a little bit of labour. So there's usually at least 3 people working on the installation. And yes, you're right, but people are normally just fixing one panel at a time.
Look, now I'm sure there's a lot of builders out there thinking, look, this sounds good. I want specs, details, maybe even a site visit. Where's the best place for them to start, Arthur?
As always, we encourage people to go to mpb.co.nz and have a look at the design information. People can speak to a mason's representative. We have a little video of an installation online that you can also have a look at. And we'll just do our best to assist you in every way, and also your designers, because I'm sure if you want the system, please talk to your building designer early so he or she can, start thinking through the elements and what needs to go together to make it work.
Thank you, Arthur. That was a really informative insight into the Mason's Enviro AAC floor, and a good reminder that some of the most important building elements are the ones we don't see every day. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for listening to the Masons Podcast. We hope you've gained some practical insights and ideas for your next project. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and visit us at mpb.co.nz for more information on our product, systems and solutions. And join us next time as we continue to explore smarter ways and solutions for building in New Zealand.
This podcast is for general information only. While we aim to provide accurate details on building products and systems, Masons is not liable for reliance on this content. Always follow product specifications, manufacturer's instructions, and relevant building codes.